What if I told you that Harry Potter made one of the most controversial mistakes in the history of magic? Or was it the wisest decision he ever made? Today, we're going to dive into one of the greatest mysteries that have tormented fans for years. Why did Harry Potter, after surviving the impossible, after defeating the most powerful dark wizard of all time, simply give up the Elder Wand? We're talking about the most powerful wand that ever existed, forged by death itself, capable of performing magic that no other wand can match. Harry won it. It was his by right, and then he simply discarded it. Seems crazy, doesn't it? But prepare yourself, because the truth behind this decision is much deeper and darker than you imagine. Before we continue, I need you to do something very important for us. If you're enjoying this content, subscribe to the channel right now. Each subscription makes a huge difference. Click that red button, turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. And please, leave in the comments which city you're watching this video from. Seriously, I want to know if there are people from all over the world here with me unraveling the mysteries of the magical world. Now yes, let's get to the complete story. The first thing you need to understand, and this is absolutely crucial, is that the answer to this question depends completely on where you're seeking the truth, in the books or in the films. Because, believe it or not, the fate of the Elder Wand unfolds in completely different ways in each version of the story. And this isn't just a small detail, it changes the entire interpretation of Harry Potter's character. In the books, specifically in the epilogue of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, we're given a scene that many consider one of the most significant of the entire saga. After repairing his own Holly and Phoenix feather wand, using the Elder Wand, proving that it truly worked for him as its true master, Harry makes a decision that defines who he really is. He goes to Dumbledore's tomb and returns the wand, placing it back alongside the greatest wizard who ever wielded it. And the words he says are absolutely revealing. Harry explains that he's going to return the Elder Wand to the place from which it came, and that if he dies a natural death like Ignotus Peverell, the third brother from the tale of the three brothers, the power of the wand will be broken forever. But in the films, we have a completely different and dramatically impactful scene. On the bridge at Hogwarts with Ron and Hermione by his side, Harry holds the Elder Wand. Ron, being Ron, asks the question we'd all ask: what should we do with it? Hermione, always practical, questions that we, as if reminding Ron that the decision isn't theirs. And then Ron drops that inconvenient truth. This is the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in the world. With it, they'd be invincible. You can see the hesitation on Harry's face. That moment of doubt. That second when he truly considers what it would be like to keep that absolute power. And then, in a gesture that's pure cinema, pure visual drama, Harry breaks the Elder Wand in half. He simply snaps it in two pieces and throws the fragments into the abyss, while Ron and Hermione smile proudly as if Harry had passed the most important moral test of his life. Now, these two versions tell very different stories about who Harry Potter is and what he values. In the book, Harry is strategic, thoughtful. He has a long-term plan to neutralize the wand's power through his own natural and undefeated death. In the films, Harry is impulsive, decisive. He destroys the temptation once and for all in an act of dramatic rejection of supreme power. Both versions have merit, both say something important about the character, but the difference is significant enough to completely change how we interpret his motivations. But before we analyze why Harry did what he did, we need to truly understand what the Elder Wand is, and why it's not just another powerful wand. This isn't a simple matter of magical strength. We're talking about an object of legend, of myth, of absolute terror that crosses centuries of wizarding history, leaving a trail of blood wherever it goes. The Elder Wand is the first of the 3 Deathly Hallows, and according to the legend told in the book The Tales of Beedle the Bard, it was created by death itself. The story tells us that three brothers, the Peverils, cheated death by building a bridge over a treacherous river where many had died. Death, frustrated at not having claimed their lives, pretended to congratulate them and offered each one a gift. Antioch Peveril, the oldest and most combative, asked for a wand more powerful than any other, a wand worthy of a wizard who had conquered death. And thus the Elder Wand was born, carved from an elder branch, infused with power beyond mortal comprehension. Now, it's important to say that Dumbledore and other scholars believe the Deathly Hallows were probably not created by death itself, but by the Peveril brothers themselves, who were extraordinarily talented wizards. But even if they are human creations and not supernatural gifts, this doesn't diminish the fact that the Elder Wand is, unquestionably, the most powerful wand that ever existed. It allows its true master to perform magic that other wands simply cannot match. When Voldemort wielded it, even without being its true owner, he was capable of performing terrifying magical feats. When Grindelwald possessed it during his reign of terror, he built an empire that nearly brought down the International Statute of Secrecy. And when Dumbledore finally won it by defeating Grindelwald in that legendary duel of 1945, he became widely recognized as the most powerful wizard in the world. But here's the problem, and this is crucial to understanding Harry's decision. The Elder Wand carries a curse. Not a magical curse in the traditional sense, but something much worse, a curse of human nature. The wand attracts ambition, envy, violence. Its very existence is an invitation for dark wizards, duelists, assassins, and megalomaniacs to seek its power. And the only way to become its master isn't through inheritance or purchase, but through defeating the previous master. You need to disarm, defeat, or kill the current owner to claim its allegiance. This means that possessing the Elder Wand is essentially painting a giant target on your back for every ambitious wizard in the world. Let's look at the dark history of this wand and see the terrifying pattern that emerges. Antioch Peveril, the first owner according to legend, used the wand to win a duel with a rival he had long wanted to defeat. But then he made the fatal mistake of bragging about it in a local tavern. That same night, while he slept drunk, another wizard broke into his room, slit his throat, and stole the wand. This is literally the beginning of the Elder Wand's story, a brutal murder motivated by greed, and from there the story only gets worse. For centuries, the wand passed from hand to hand through violence. Emeric the Evil, a dark wizard of considerable power, possessed it for some time until he was killed. Egbert the Egregious, another notorious duelist, claimed it and met an equally violent end. The wand appeared and disappeared from recorded history, always leaving death and destruction in its wake. Many scholars believe that countless owners of the wand didn't even know they possessed it, having disarmed the previous owner without knowledge of the legend, only to be killed by someone actively searching for it. In the 20th century, the wand resurfaced in the hands of Grigorovich, the famous Bulgarian wand-maker. Grigorovich knew what he had and ambitiously tried to unravel its secrets to replicate its power. But in 1945, a young blonde wizard broke into his workshop, disarmed him, and stole the Elder Wand in a bold attack. That young man was Gellert Grindelwald, and with the wand in his hands, he launched a campaign of terror that nearly destroyed the wizarding world. Grindelwald used the Elder Wand to build an army, subjugate magical governments, and promote his ideology of wizard supremacy over muggles. Only when Albus Dumbledore, his former friend and love, finally faced him in a duel, did Grindelwald's reign of terror end. Dumbledore kept the Elder Wand for over 50 years, but even he, the wisest wizard of his generation, feared its corrupting power. He never used it for dominion or conquest, but carried the weight of knowing what it represented and what it had personally cost him. When Severus Snape killed him atop the astronomy tower, Dumbledore believed that having planned his own death, the wand's line of mastery would die with him. But the plan failed because Draco Malfoy had disarmed Dumbledore moments before, inadvertently becoming the true master of the Elder Wand without ever touching it. And then we come to Voldemort, who sought the wand obsessively, believing it was the key to finally defeating Harry Potter. He desecrated Dumbledore's tomb, tore the wand from his dead hands, and believed he finally had supreme power. But he was wrong. The wand was never truly his, because he wasn't its true master. Harry was, because Harry had disarmed Draco Malfoy at Malfoy Manor, inadvertently claiming the wand's allegiance, without ever having touched it. This story, this trail of blood through the centuries, is what Harry Potter inherited along with the mastery of the Elder Wand. It wasn't just a tool of power, it was a legacy of death, betrayal, and uncontrolled ambition. To truly understand why Harry did what he did, we need to look at who Harry Potter really is, not as the chosen one, not as the boy who lived, but as a human being shaped by extraordinary circumstances. Because Harry's decision about the Elder Wand wasn't made in a vacuum, it was the result of a lifetime of experiences that shaped his fundamental values. Harry Potter didn't grow up in a castle. He wasn't pampered with magical privileges. He wasn't raised believing he was special or destined for greatness. Harry grew up in a cupboard under the stairs at number 4, Privet Drive. He was raised by an aunt and uncle who despised him, who treated him as less than human, who made him feel his very existence was a burden. For 11 years, Harry had no proper name in the Dursley household. He was just the boy, the nephew, the one who shouldn't be seen or heard. He wore Dudley's old clothes, ate leftovers, slept in conditions that bordered on abuse, and didn't have a single friend. When magic entered Harry's life, it didn't come as a promise of power or dominion. It came as liberation. It came as belonging. Hogwarts wasn't a place where Harry would learn to conquer or subjugate. It was a home, the first true home he'd ever had. Magic, for Harry, was always about connection, about finding people who cared about him, about being part of something larger that had nothing to do with domination and everything to do with community. Contrast this with Tom Riddle, who also grew up in an orphanage, was also rejected and alone, but who responded to that rejection with hatred, with a burning desire to prove his superiority, to make all those who rejected him bow before him. Voldemort saw magic as a tool of power, as proof that he was superior, as a means to achieve immortality and absolute dominion. For Voldemort, there was no relationship, no love, no loyalty that wasn't bought through fear. He split his soul 7 times to avoid death because the idea of mortality, of being common, of being equal to any other wizard, was unbearable to him. Harry had every reason to follow a similar path. He had every reason to embrace power when he discovered he was famous, that he had defeated the most powerful dark wizard as a baby, that he was the chosen one according to an ancient prophecy. But he didn't do that. When Harry discovered he was famous in the wizarding world, his first reaction wasn't pride or arrogance, it was discomfort. He didn't want attention. He didn't want to be special. He just wanted to belong, to have friends, to live a normal life. And throughout 7 years at Hogwarts, we see Harry consistently rejecting opportunities to seek personal power. In the first year, when he found the Mirror of Erised, what he saw wasn't power or glory. He saw his family, alive and smiling at him. In the second year, when he could have used his ability to speak to snakes to gain influence or fear from others, he was horrified when they realized he was a Parselmouth, associating him with Slytherin and Voldemort. In the fourth year, when his name came out of the Goblet of Fire, Harry didn't want to compete in the Triwizard Tournament. He was furious at being forced to participate. Even when Harry formed Dumbledore's army in the 5th year, it wasn't because he wanted to be a leader or commander. It was because Umbridge was putting everyone in danger with her refusal to teach them proper defense against the dark arts, and someone needed to do something about it. Harry taught defense because it was necessary, not because he sought followers or admirers. And when DA members looked at him as a hero, Harry often felt uncomfortable, as if he didn't deserve that reverence. Harry Potter never wanted to be a conqueror. He never wanted to be feared. He never wanted supreme power. What Harry always wanted, desperately, was something much simpler and much more human. He wanted peace. He wanted a family. He wanted to live without the weight of prophecies and dark destinies on his shoulders. He wanted to be able to wake up in the morning without wondering if this would be the day Voldemort found him. He wanted to be normal, or as close to normal as a famous wizard could be. And this is absolutely critical to understanding his decision about the Elder Wand, because keeping that wand would mean rejecting everything Harry always wanted. It would mean accepting a life of perpetual danger, of constant challenges, of never being able to let his guard down. It would mean becoming exactly the kind of figure Harry spent his entire adolescence fighting against. There's also the question of the examples Harry had before him about what absolute power does to people. He saw Voldemort, obviously, a man so consumed by the pursuit of power and immortality that he destroyed his own humanity, created Horcruxes through brutal murders, and ended up as something less than human, less than spirit, an abomination kept alive only by dark magic and obsession. Harry saw how this pursuit of power destroyed not just Voldemort, but everyone around him, how it cost the lives of his parents, of Cedric, of Sirius, of Dumbledore, of Lupin, of Tonks, of Fred, of Colin Creevey, of Lavender Brown, of so many others. But Harry also saw more subtle and perhaps more disturbing examples of the corrupting power of unbridled ambition. He learned about Gellert Grindelwald and his reign of terror, about how Grindelwald used the Elder Wand to justify atrocities with the motto, "For the greater good." And more significantly, Harry learned the truth about young Albus Dumbledore, the man he most admired in the world. During his youth, Dumbledore wasn't the wise and restrained mentor Harry knew. He was brilliant, ambitious, and dangerously attracted to the idea of power. When he met Gellert Grindelwald that fateful summer in Godric's Hollow, the two planned together to seek the Deathly Hallows and use that power to establish a new world order where wizards would rule over muggles for the greater good. Dumbledore was genuinely seduced by this vision, genuinely tempted to use his extraordinary talent to reshape the world according to his own image of how things should be. And then came the tragedy. In the confrontation between Dumbledore, his brother Aberforth, and Grindelwald, a stray curse killed Ariana, Dumbledore's vulnerable sister. Dumbledore never knew for certain whose curse killed her, and that uncertainty haunted him for the rest of his life. He learned, in the most brutal way possible, that seeking supreme power has consequences, that even with the best intentions, absolute power can destroy everything you love. Dumbledore spent the rest of his life trying to redeem himself, trying to use his power wisely, always refusing positions of political authority like Minister of Magic, because he didn't trust himself with that kind of power. And yet, even decades later, even after becoming one of the most respected wizards in the world, Dumbledore admitted to Harry that he still couldn't be trusted with power. When Harry asked why Dumbledore never became Minister of Magic when he was obviously the most qualified person, Dumbledore answered with brutal honesty, because he had proven in his youth that power was his weakness. Harry absorbed these lessons. He saw what power did to Voldemort, transforming him into a monster. He saw what it almost did to Dumbledore, almost transforming him into a well-intentioned tyrant. And he even saw small examples in people he knew. How Pettigrew betrayed his friends when he saw an opportunity to be on the winning side. How Fudge refused to accept the truth about Voldemort's return because it threatened his political power. How even Percy Weasley placed ambition above family for a time. All these experiences shaped Harry into a person who not only rejected supreme power, but actively distrusted it. Harry learned that absolute power doesn't bring happiness, doesn't bring peace, and certainly doesn't bring love. And after 7 brutal years of war, loss, and sacrifice, peace, happiness, and love were exactly what Harry wanted most in the world. Now let's talk about something many fans don't fully consider when discussing Harry's decision: the specific nature of how wand allegiance works in the Harry Potter universe, and especially how the Elder Wand transfers its mastery. Because this isn't just a technical detail of how magic works, it's fundamental to understanding why keeping the Elder Wand would be a logistical and existential nightmare for Harry. Wands in Harry Potter's world aren't passive tools. They have a form of consciousness, an allegiance that develops with their wizard. As Ollivander always said, the wand chooses the wizard. And while most wands develop a strong and lasting loyalty to their original owner, all wands can be won. If you disarm someone, if you take their wand by force, the wand may transfer its allegiance to you. This doesn't mean the original owner's wand will become completely useless to them, but it means it won't work as well as it would for the new master. The Elder Wand takes this to an absolute extreme. It's described as the most capricious and volatile wand of all. It has no sentimental loyalty. It doesn't care who created it or who possessed it the longest. It cares only about power. The Elder Wand recognizes and serves only the one who defeated its previous master. That's all that matters to it. Pure power, demonstrated through defeat. This creates a unique problem. With most wands, even if someone disarms you, your wand will still work for you reasonably well, especially if you have a long history together. But the Elder Wand? If you're no longer the most powerful master, if someone has defeated you, the wand simply won't be as effective for you. It will be constantly waiting to return to its true master. Now consider Harry's situation at the end of Deathly Hallows. He's the true master of the Elder Wand because he disarmed Draco Malfoy, who had disarmed Dumbledore. Harry never touched the Elder Wand when this happened. He didn't even know he was claiming its mastery. The transfer of allegiance happened automatically, invisibly, simply because Harry defeated the current master in a duel. This means the same thing could happen to Harry, at any time, anywhere. If someone disarmed him, if someone defeated him in combat, that person would become the new master of the Elder Wand. And they wouldn't even need to know it had happened for it to happen. Just as Draco didn't know he had become master of the Elder Wand, just as Harry didn't know until Ollivander explained, the next master could be completely oblivious to the fact that they now commanded the most powerful wand in the world. Now Harry had a plan to deal with this. His logic, as he explained in the book, was to die undefeated. If he lived his life without ever being defeated in a duel, if he eventually died of natural causes in old age, then the Elder Wand's line of mastery would be broken. There would be no new master, because no one would have defeated the previous master. The wand would still exist, would still be powerful, but it wouldn't have a true master, and therefore its power would be diminished, more difficult to fully exercise. It's a beautiful plan in theory. It followed the example of Ignotus Peverell, the third brother from the tale of the Deathly Hallows, who accepted death as an old friend when his time came. Harry was choosing humility and mortality over immortal power, following the path of the wisest brother. But there was a huge problem with this plan. It wasn't realistic. Harry Potter, at 17 years old, had already survived Voldemort 7 times. He had faced basilisks, dementors, Death Eaters, mortal duels, and a literal war. And now, after defeating Voldemort, what was Harry planning to do with his life? Become an Auror, a hunter of dark wizards, someone whose profession literally involves entering regular magical combat with some of the most dangerous wizards in the world. How did Harry expect to never be defeated working as an aura? Auras enter dangerous situations constantly. They fight dark wizards who don't follow rules, who use unforgivable curses, who ambush, who use hostages, who don't fight honorably. The idea that Harry could have an entire career as an aura, possibly decades, without ever once being disarmed or defeated, was absurdly optimistic. And we're not just talking about life or death situations. Think about training sessions. Think about practical exercises. Think about situations where Harry could be disarmed by fellow auras during simulations. Each of these situations could potentially transfer the Elder Wand's mastery. The wand doesn't distinguish between real and practiced disarmament. Defeat is defeat. So, under scrutiny, Harry's plan seems deeply flawed. He couldn't realistically expect to live undefeated. This would mean he'd fail in his objective of breaking the wand's line of mastery, right? Well, here's where things get ironically interesting. Because if Harry's plan was flawed in theory, in practice, it may have been accidentally brilliant. You see, if Harry were disarmed during his career as an aura, which is practically inevitable, the Elder Wand's mastery would pass to whoever disarmed him. But that person probably wouldn't know they'd become the master. They'd continue their lives normally and eventually would be disarmed by someone else, who would become the new master without knowing. And this cycle would continue infinitely. The Elder Wand's mastery would become impossible to track. It would pass through dozens, perhaps hundreds of wizards over the years, none of them knowing they possessed it, none of them actively seeking the wand. The lineage would become so confused, so diffuse, so broken, that the wand would effectively lose its power. Not because it had no master, but because it would have too many masters, and none of them would know or care. This is ingeniously simple. Harry's plan didn't need to work as he thought it would work. It just needed him to live a normal and dangerous enough life for the wand's mastery to disperse into the chaos of real life. And considering Harry planned to be an aura, living a life full of confrontations and dangers, this was practically guaranteed. But even if that were the final outcome, it doesn't change the fact that keeping the Elder Wand would mean living with a target on his back. Because while the mastery might eventually disperse, as long as Harry was known as the last master of the Elder Wand, as long as people believed defeating him meant gaining its power, he would be hunted. Ambitious dark wizards, duelists seeking fame, anyone seduced by the wand's legend would come after him. And it wasn't just about Harry. It was about everyone he loved. Ginny would become a target. His future children would become targets. Ron and Hermione, by association, would be in danger. Anyone close to Harry could be used as leverage to force him into a duel or as collateral victims of attacks against him. Harry had spent his entire adolescence living under constant threat. He had grown up knowing Voldemort wanted to kill him. He had lost his parents because of it, lost Sirius, lost so many people he loved. And now, finally, Voldemort was dead. The war was over. Harry had the chance to live without that constant threat of assassination hanging over him. Why would he voluntarily choose to take on a new target, a new reason for dangerous people to hunt him? The answer is simple. He wouldn't choose that, and he didn't choose it. Because Harry Potter was never about accumulating power. He was about protecting the people he loved and finding peace after years of conflict. But let's consider the other side of this discussion for a moment. Let's honestly examine what Harry could have done if he had kept the Elder Wand and decided to wield it. Because it's not just fans questioning his decision, Ron himself questions it in the film. And it's a valid question. With the Elder Wand, Harry could have become practically invincible. He could have reshaped the entire wizarding world. So why didn't he do that? First, let's consider what Harry could have pragmatically accomplished. As an aura wielding the Elder Wand, he would have been an unstoppable force against dark wizards. Any remaining Death Eaters, any Voldemort sympathizers trying to start a new pure-blood supremacy movement, any dark wizard trying to fill the power vacuum left by Voldemort's death. Harry could have crushed them almost effortlessly. He could have established a peace in force through absolute power. He also could have used the wand to reform the wizarding world in more constructive ways. He could have pushed for changes in how house elves are treated, something Hermione cared deeply about. He could have reformed Azkaban, eliminating Dementors as guards, something that caused unimaginable suffering even to innocent people like Sirius. He could have forced reconciliation between different factions of the wizarding world, between purebloods and muggleborns, between humans and other magical creatures. With the Elder Wand plus the invisibility cloak and knowledge of where the Resurrection Stone was, Harry would be the master of death, possessing all three Hallows. Legends say whoever possessed all three would become invincible, would conquer death itself, would become all-powerful. And look, in theory, that sounds incredible. Imagine a benevolent Harry Potter using absolute power to create a fair, safe and progressive magical world. He wouldn't be like Voldemort or Grindelwald, using power for selfish dominion. He would use it for good, to protect the innocent, to ensure nothing like Voldemort's rise could happen again. But here's the problem with this fantasy, and it's a problem the Harry Potter series itself explores deeply. Absolute power doesn't work that way. Even with the best intentions, even with the purest heart, unlimited power corrupts, and not necessarily by turning you into a mustache-twirling villain, but by subtly changing how you see the world and the people in it. This is exactly the trap Dumbledore and Grindelwald nearly fell into when they were young. They didn't plan to be villains. They genuinely believed ruling over Muggles would be for the greater good, that wizards needed to take control to prevent Muggle wars, to protect the world. But they were willing to sacrifice individual freedom, personal agency, people's fundamental right to choose their own path, all in the name of their grand vision. And when Ariana died as a result of their arrogance, Dumbledore finally understood. No matter how pure your intentions, using supreme power to control others is fundamentally wrong. There's also a more subtle, psychological truth here. When you're known as the most powerful person in the world, people stop treating you as human. They treat you as a symbol, an icon, a force of nature. They stop telling you when you're wrong because they're afraid of you, or because they assume you must know better. You become isolated, surrounded by admirers and courtiers, but without true friends who will challenge you or keep you grounded. Harry had already experienced this on a smaller scale. After he returned from witnessing Voldemort's return at the end of fourth year, many people treated him as a liar or crazy, but some idolized him. In sixth year, after it became clear Harry was right all along, he became almost a celebrity at Hogwarts again. And Harry hated it. He hated being stared at, hated that people whispered about him, hated that his actions were constantly analyzed and debated. Now imagine that amplified 1,000 times. Imagine being known throughout the wizarding world as the Master of Death, the wizard wielding the Elder Wand, the man who defeated Voldemort and now possessed absolute power. Harry could never have a normal life. He could never have a casual conversation without people being nervous or awestruck. He could never have a genuine relationship because everyone would be aware of the massive power imbalance. Even Ginny, who knew him better than anyone, would have to deal with the fact that her boyfriend or husband could, with a flick of a wand, do literally anything. And perhaps most importantly, keeping the Elder Wand would have betrayed everything Harry learned about what makes a person truly strong. Harry defeated Voldemort not because he had more raw power, but because he had things to live for, people he loved, the ability to sacrifice himself for others. Harry's strength always came from his humanity, his empathy, his willingness to trust and love even after devastating loss. Voldemort was obsessed with power because he had nothing else. He had no love, No friends, no family, no real connection to anyone. He split his soul because he saw relationships as weaknesses, as vulnerabilities to be eliminated. And in the end, it was exactly that lack of humanity that destroyed him. He couldn't understand Lily's sacrifice, couldn't understand why Harry would voluntarily walk to his death, couldn't comprehend that love and loyalty are forms of power that dark magic could never equal. If Harry had kept the Elder Wand, if he had embraced being the most powerful wizard in the world, he would have risked becoming exactly the kind of figure he fought against. Not a Voldemort, not a cruel tyrant, but perhaps a Dumbledore, someone who carries the weight of power with a heavy conscience, always tempted to use just a little more force to achieve what he believes is right. And Harry saw what that did to Dumbledore. He saw how he carried guilt and regret until the day of his death. He saw how Dumbledore, even with all his good intentions, manipulated Harry in ways that were sometimes questionable, raising him like a lamb for slaughter because he believed it was necessary. Dumbledore was a great man, but he himself would admit he was imperfect, and his imperfections were amplified by the amount of power he held. Harry didn't want that. He didn't want the burden of being the final arbiter of right and wrong. He didn't want the responsibility of using supreme power wisely, knowing that even small errors in judgment could have devastating consequences when amplified by a wand that could perform any magic. What Harry wanted deep in his soul was what he had wanted since he looked in the mirror of Erist in first year. He wanted his family back. He wanted the normal life that was stolen from him. He wanted to wake up next to Ginny, raise children, maybe have a meaningful career protecting people, but come home at night to dinner and laughter and a life that didn't revolve around destiny or prophecies or weapons of unlimited power. And that choice, that rejection of supreme power in favor of humanity and normalcy, wasn't weakness. It was the strongest choice Harry ever made. Because it's easy to take power when it's offered. It's easy to justify keeping it for safety or just in case. The difficult thing is to let it go, to trust that the world will continue without you exercising absolute control over it, to trust that other people will make good choices without you forcing them. Now let's talk about something that makes Harry's decision even more significant. The fact that he wasn't just rejecting the Elder Wand, he was rejecting being the master of death. And to understand the weight of this, we need to go back to the tale of the three brothers and what the Hallows represent. In the tale of the three brothers, each Hallow represents a different response to mortality. The first brother, Antioch, received the Elder Wand and represented arrogance and desire for conquest. He wanted a wand so powerful it could defeat any adversary, a wand worthy of someone who had cheated death. But his arrogance led him to boast, and he was murdered by another wizard who coveted that power. Antioch rejected his mortality by trying to become invincible through force, and it killed him. The second brother, Cadmus, received the Resurrection Stone and represented denial and inability to let go. He wanted the stone specifically to bring back the woman he loved, who had died. But when he summoned her, she came back sad and cold, separated from him by a veil she shouldn't have crossed. Unable to truly be with her but unable to let her go again, Cadmus hanged himself to join her in death. Cadmus rejected his mortality by trying to undo it, trying to bring the dead back, and it destroyed him too. Only the third brother, Ignotus, made the wise choice. He asked for something that would allow him to leave death without being followed, and received the invisibility cloak. He used it to live his life fully, to hide from death until he was ready, until he had lived enough and was satisfied. Only when he was an old man, after a long and happy life, did he remove the cloak, pass it to his son, and greet death as an old friend. Ignotus accepted his mortality, lived within it instead of fighting against it, and only he had a happy life. And here's the most brilliant point. Harry possessed all three Hallows. He inherited the invisibility cloak from his father James, who inherited it from his father, tracing the lineage back to Ignotus Peverell. He won the Resurrection Stone when it was hidden inside the golden snitch that Dumbledore left him, and he became the master of the Elder Wand by disarming Draco Malfoy. For a brief moment in history, Harry Potter was the master of death, the first person in centuries, perhaps the first since the Peverells themselves, to possess all three Hallows simultaneously. Legends say the master of death would be invincible, would conquer death itself, would become all-powerful, and in a sense that was true. With the invisibility cloak, Harry could hide from anyone. With the Resurrection Stone, he could summon the dead for counsel or companionship. With the Elder Wand, he could defeat any adversary in combat. Combined, these three things would effectively make him unbeatable. But Harry did something extraordinary. He chose which brother he wanted to be. He didn't keep all three Hallows. He let the Resurrection Stone fall in the Forbidden Forest when he was walking to his death and never went back to look for it. He returned the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb, removing it from circulation. And he kept only the invisibility cloak, Ignotus's Hallow, the only one that represented wisdom and acceptance of mortality. This choice was deeply symbolic. Harry was saying he didn't want to conquer death, didn't want power over life and death, didn't want immortality or invincibility. He wanted only the protection necessary to live his life, the ability to hide when needed, the same tool Ignotus used to live until he was ready to peacefully embrace death. And think about what happened when Harry used the Resurrection Stone. He used it once, when he was walking to what he believed was his death in the heart of the Forbidden Forest. He summoned the shades of his parents, of Sirius, of Lupin, and they walked beside him, giving him courage to face Voldemort one last time. But even in that moment of extreme fear, even when he most wanted his loved ones to be alive, Harry didn't try to truly bring them back. He didn't use the stone to resurrect them, only to see them once more, to hear that they were proud of him, that dying would be quick and painless. And after Voldemort hit him with the killing curse, after Harry went to that strange limbo that looked like King's Cross Station, after he chose to return to life instead of moving on, he left the Resurrection Stone behind. He never tried to recover it. He explained that this was intentional, that it was lost in the place where he dropped it, hidden under leaves and earth, and would be almost impossible to find again. Why? Because Harry understood what Cadmus didn't understand. The dead should remain dead. Bringing shades of them back, even if it were possible, would be wrong. It would be cruelty both to them and to whoever summoned them. Harry had lost so many people he loved, but he wasn't going to make the mistake of trying to undo those deaths. He would carry their memory, live in a way that honored them, but wouldn't try to bring specters back from beyond the veil. This was another demonstration of Harry's wisdom, his emotional maturity that went far beyond his 17 years. Voldemort could never have made that choice. Voldemort, who feared death above all else, would have used the Resurrection Stone obsessively, would have tried to discover its limits, would have sought ways to use it to achieve true immortality. But Harry, who had voluntarily walked to his own death, who had made peace with mortality, didn't need the stone. And then, when the decision about the Elder Wand came, Harry once again chose wisdom over power. He could have kept the wand, could have become like Antioch, the invincible warrior. But he saw where that led, not just in the story, but in real life, with wizards like Voldemort and even Dumbledore who struggled under the weight of possessing supreme power. In the end, Harry kept only the invisibility cloak, and even that he didn't plan to keep selfishly. We know from the epilogue that he eventually passed the cloak to his son James, just as his father had done with him, continuing the tradition begun by Ignotus Peverell. The cloak wasn't a symbol of power or conquest. It was a family heirloom, a tool of protection passed from generation to generation. What makes this so powerful is that Harry had all three Hallows within his reach, had the power to truly become the master of death, and he consciously, deliberately rejected two of them. He made the most difficult decision that exists, giving up power when you could easily justify keeping it. And by doing so, he proved he was worthy of possessing that power in the first place, because he would never use it for selfish purposes. So, at the end of everything, what have we learned about why Harry Potter didn't keep the Elder Wand? The answer, as with most great questions about complex characters, has many layers. On the surface, Harry rejected the wand because it was dangerous, because it would attract enemies, because possessing it would mean living under constant threat. And that's true, but it's only the beginning. More deeply, Harry rejected the wand because it represented everything he had fought against for 7 years. It represented the pursuit of supreme power, the desire to dominate death, the arrogance of believing you should control others through force. Voldemort had spent his entire life pursuing that kind of power and destroyed himself in the process. Grindelwald had nearly destroyed the wizarding world, seeking it. Even Dumbledore, the best of men, carried regret for the rest of his life for having been tempted by it. Harry saw all these examples and made a conscious decision. He didn't want to be defined by power. He didn't want his life to be about being the strongest wizard, the most feared, the most invincible. He wanted something much more human and much more difficult to achieve. He wanted peace. He wanted love. He wanted the normal life that had been stolen from him when Voldemort killed his parents. And perhaps most importantly, Harry understood something Voldemort could never understand. True strength doesn't come from how much power you possess, but from how much power you're willing to give up. Anyone can pick up a weapon of unlimited destruction and wield it. It takes true courage, true wisdom, true strength of character to put that weapon aside and choose a different path. Harry's decision about the Elder Wand was his final victory over Voldemort, not because he defeated him in combat, but because he fundamentally chose a different path. Voldemort died seeking immortality and absolute power, having destroyed his humanity in the pursuit. Harry lived accepting his mortality, embracing his humanity, choosing love and connection over power and conquest. In the books, Harry returns the wand to Dumbledore and plans to die undefeated, following Ignotus Peveril's example. It's a more subtle, more thoughtful choice that respects the history and symbolism of the Deathly Hallows. In the films, Harry dramatically breaks the wand, eliminating the temptation once and for all. It's a more cinematic, more viscerally satisfying choice that works perfectly for the visual medium. Both versions have merit. Both say something important about who Harry is. But the underlying truth is the same. Harry Potter didn't keep the Elder Wand because he didn't need it. He had proven everything he needed to prove. He had saved the wizarding world. He had fulfilled the prophecy. He had defeated the most powerful Dark Lord in history. And now, finally, he could simply be Harry, not the boy who lived, not the chosen one, not the master of death, just Harry Potter, a young man who deserved the chance to live without the weight of destinies and prophecies and legendary weapons on his shoulders. A young man who had given so much, sacrificed so much, lost so much, and could now finally have the only thing he ever really wanted, a life. And in that choice, Harry teaches us something profound about power and character. He shows us that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply walk away. Sometimes winning isn't about accumulating power, it's about having the wisdom to reject it. Sometimes true heroism isn't in wielding the sharpest sword, but in having the courage to put it down. Harry Potter defeated Voldemort, not just with magic, but with choices. He chose love over hatred. He chose sacrifice over self-preservation. He chose friendship over solitude. He chose humanity over power. And in the end, when the war was over and he held the most powerful weapon that ever existed, he made one more choice that defined who he truly was. He chose peace over dominion. He chose life over legend. He chose to be human over being all-powerful. And that, in the end, is the dark and beautiful truth behind why Harry didn't keep the Elder Wand. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't weakness. It was the greatest demonstration of strength of character in the entire series. It was Harry Potter, after 7 years of war and loss, finally choosing to live instead of merely survive. It was the final act of heroism from a young man who had been forced to grow up too fast, to carry burdens that were too heavy, and who could now finally put those burdens aside and simply be. And if you've made it this far, if you've watched this entire journey with me exploring this fascinating question about Harry Potter, I want to sincerely thank you. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like, share it with other Harry Potter fans who might appreciate this analysis, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Each one of you makes a difference. And now I'm genuinely curious. What do you think? Do you agree Harry made the right choice in giving up the Elder Wand? Or do you think he should have kept it? Do you prefer how it was portrayed in the books or in the films? Leave your opinions in the comments. I read all of them and love discussing these questions with you. And remember, as Dumbledore once told Harry, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Harry took that advice to heart when he rejected the Elder Wand. Perhaps we can all learn something from that. Until the next video, keep exploring the magic with us, and always remember, the stories we love can teach us a lot about who we want to be in the real world.